2012-13 television season, but nothing is more emblematic than me to how it worked than do no harm. Right? So this became someone infamous on the internet. Okay, Dr. Face Hands. This was a Jekyll and Hyde type deal. This was a drama that aired on NBC, and it was the first program to ever debut to under a 1 in the adults 18 to 49 demographic on a broadcast network. Right? And it was airing Thursdays at 10 p.m. It started with a 0.9. It dropped to a 0.7 the next week, and then NBC pulled it. Okay, then it went on to air the remaining episodes at 10 o'clock on Saturday in the summer. It was a burn-off, which gets its average all the way down to a 0.46 and as low as a 0.3. And so we're going to go through all of them from biggest to smallest. But that one is going to remain the most infamous. So there were more drama flops in 2012, 2013. Now, this was not a complete strikeout on dramas the way it was for comedies. For example, we get on the CW Arrow, okay, who's going to make the Arrowverse, who only wrapped up with The Flash ending earlier this year. Okay, and then this is also where we get Chicago Fire. And the Chicago shows are still airing to this day. Chicago Med and PD and Fire. So there were some enduring shows that come out of this. But there's also some really big flops. So I'm going to be talking about the adults 18 to 49 demographic, because that is what advertisers like. And to give you a context here, in the 2012-13 TV season, the big four broadcasters, the average rating is about a 2.1. So if you just want a quick guide on something, is that if it's above a 2, it probably gets renewed. If it's below a 2, it's probably not going to get renewed. That's just the general thing there, but there can be outside circumstances for this. The other caveat is called the burn-off caveat. Okay? Some of these shows, when they are pulled, okay, they are just placed online. So they never air on broadcast TV, so it doesn't bring the ratings average down. Other shows, at least, do get a proper burn-off. Either they just air across Christmas break, or they save them for the summer to burn them off, and I do include those in there. Right? So, like, Do No Harm, as a typo, big flop. Now, if I said it averaged a 0.8 because it only aired 2 episodes, that's still a big flop, but it doesn't really get to the immensity of how bad it was. Right? So just saying that it's not always equal. So we are going to go from the highest to the lowest rating of these flops. So the first is Vegas. Right? So Vegas is a big investment by CBS, where they're trying with Dennis Quaid and Michael Chiklis to get a bit higher caliber actors than might typically do a broadcast drama. Okay? And it was a pricey period piece set in 1960s Las Vegas. Now, this is airing at 10 o'clock on Tuesdays originally, after NCIS LA, which was airing after NCIS. Right? Now, if CBS had supreme confidence in it, they might have broken up the NCIS duo for this, but they didn't. And so it's going to debut to a 2.5, which is decent on its own. NCIS LA was at like a 3 that night. But in total viewers, it's quite impressive. Almost 15 million people watched the premiere of Vegas live. But there is discrimination based on age in this industry. Okay? Advertisers don't care about people over the age of 50, at least not as much. So that wasn't going to be really helping it, especially since the NCIS shows also skewed very, very old. So it's going to be airing there in the fall. And then in the spring, they're going to shift it to Fridays at 9 p.m. between Undercover Boss and Blue Bloods for the rest of its run. So it's going to end up with a ratings average of a 1.48. Its ratings high is a 2.5. Its ratings low is a 0.5. And that 0.5 is a little unfair for it. There was one of these episodes that got preempted last minute due to coverage of the pursuit of the bomber of the Boston Marathon. And so then it aired the next day on a Saturday, right? So it's a 0.5, but it's low even if you throw that out as a 0.7. It was doing really poorly once it got to Friday nights. It just kept on dropping and dropping and dropping. And it goes hand in hand with this show, Golden Boy. This was supposed to be a mid-season replacement, airing Fridays at 9. But CBS decided that kind of last minute that it was going to give it a chance and it was going to flip slots with Vegas. So this aired one episode on Friday and then aired the rest of it on Tuesday. So many times after reruns. So, thanks a lot. It was Tuesday at 10 p.m. All right, it averaged a 1.42. It got as high as a 1.8, as low as a 1. So this is a case where you look at the averages. These both had some combination of airing on Tuesday and Friday in those slots. Golden Boy and Vegas both ended up around the same spot. Tons of total viewers, not a lot of people under the age of 50. CBS had higher expectations for their dramas at the time, so they fail. So for a long time, ABC's Thursday at 8 o'clock time slot was cursed. Okay? It had multiple shows. Flash Forward, My Generation, Charlie's Angels, Missing, all failed in this time slot. So they put another high concept show like Last Resort here, airing before Grey's Anatomy. So it's at the cursed Thursday 8 p.m. slot. It premiered at a 2.2, and then as it ran its entire course of its episodes, airing into January, it just kept on dropping and dropping and dropping until it settled at a 1. So averaged a 1.38. So it was not necessarily as much of an embarrassment as stuff like My Generation or Charlie's Angels, but it was a failure nonetheless. Deception on NBC. A show that's kind of hard to look up because a few years later, ABC is going to have a show of the same name. All right, so this was a mid-season replacement, filling in the gap between the hiatus for Revolution on NBC. So it aired Monday at 10 p.m. It aired after The Biggest Loser. And The Biggest Loser during this time is breaking a 2. It's 4. So it's going to start at a 2, and it's going to basically drop every single episode, get as low as a 1.1 with a 1.29 average. So it wasn't embarrassing compared to some of the other flops that are going to be shown here, but it was a placeholder show airing after a placeholder show, and so NBC does not bring it back. Okay, here's a show that they tried to have a lot of hype for and just didn't even go up anywhere. Okay, 666 Park Avenue. All right. This was airing Sundays at 10 p.m. It was airing after Revenge, and they had this big confidence in moving Revenge to that slot that Desperate Housewives had been in. So it was airing Sundays at 10 p.m. It started at a 2.1, and Revenge was over a 3 that night. So this was not an impressive score. Pan Am had premiered to a 3.1 in that same slot a year earlier, and it was hanging out in the 1s. Now, what ended up actually taking the show down was that the set was damaged by Hurricane Sandy, and ABC was not going to invest any money in continuing that afterwards. So it got pulled. And then those episodes are burned off in the summer on Saturdays, getting as low as a 0.3. And most of the country didn't even get to see the end of the last episode because ABC had a breaking news report about the George Zimmerman trial that messed it up. So this is a case where ABC is going to actually do worse than this time slot. Right afterwards, they're going to try a comedy block airing after Revenge. They're going to try Red Widow. They're going to show they could do done worse, but they had better expectations for it. They brought in, a familiar face from Lost. It just didn't really pan out. And at that point, this is the show that replaced it, Red Widow. This got a lot of Oscar promotion. It had a 2-hour premiere Sunday at 9 o'clock, and that did a 1.5. Which, again, when the average show does a 2.1 right now, 1.5 is not a good place to start. So its average is a 1.1, and near the end, it got pretty egregious. It was into the 0.7 range. It was losing over half of Revenge. So it was canceled and forgotten. Another show with a ridiculous name and guy concept, The Mob Doctor on Fox. So Fox premiered its Monday lineup a week before the regular season, trying to get some early momentum from it. And so its lead-in was Bones. Bones is playing in the low 2s. The Mob Doctor only managed a 1.5. It's going to drop from there and get as low as below a 1. Then Fox is going to burn it off in a couple ways. They're going to keep on airing it on Mondays throughout Christmas break, as well as airing some episodes on Saturdays, where it's going to get as low as a 0.4 and canceled. The next one is Made in Jersey. So, this is airing on Fridays for CBS. And so they're going to have at 8 o'clock CSI New York, at 10 o'clock Blue Bloods, which are both very old skewing, quite serious New York police dramas. And then they were going to have the lighter marketed Made in Jersey at 9 o'clock on Fridays. Right? And it premiered to a 1.1, right? Which is, 2 years earlier, Blue Bloods had premiered to a 2.2 on Friday. All right, so that's half of it. The next week, it dropped to a 0.8. It was dragging down Blue Bloods. That was the first episode of Blue Bloods to ever fall below 10 million viewers. And then it got pulled. All right, and then they're going to shift CSI New York back to 9 o'clock, air reruns later, Undercover Boss, in the 8 o'clock slot. CBS is going to burn off the rest of the episodes around the Christmas holiday on Saturdays, when it would get as low as a 0.3. So it's one of those things where it derailed the entire lineup. Everything around it did significantly better than it. And so it just got pulled, very fast pull. All right, so 0 Hour. Okay, another high concept thing that they try in this cursed Thursday 8 o'clock time slot for ABC, after we had already seen the failure of Last Resort. So it premiered on Valentine's Day. It only premiered to a 1.4. It just dropped from there. They ended up going to pull it so they can air Wife Swap. And then it's going to be airing its burn off on Saturdays in the summer, where it's going to get as low as a 0.3. All right. Already talked about Do No Harm. So all we got left are CW flops. Emily Owens, MD. So historically, what the CW had done is they had started in mid-September and gotten several weeks of airing shows where there's not other broadcast competition, and then they take a break when the season started. Okay, this time they changed how they were going to do it. They were going to start later in October, and they were going to air their programming alongside when the presidential debates were. So we're going to have Beauty and the Beast is going to premiere after the Vampire Diaries against the presidential debate, and it's going to premiere at a 1.2. So we get Emily Owens. This also premieres Tuesday at 9 p.m. against a presidential debate. So if you're not interested in the politics, this is your new option. You can only pull at 0.5. It never really does that much worse than that. It did get as low as a 0.3. But it's going to stay in that 0.3, 0.4 range for the rest of its run. And the CW is just not going to pick it back up. Now, the fact that its low was a 0.3 in the CW, when some of these other shows, like Do You Know Harm, 0 Hour, and Made in Jersey, are going to get as low as a 0.3 in their burn-offs. Right? Like I said, this shows how bad some of them did. Now, it wasn't a mega flop for the CW. The mega flop for the CW was this show, Cult. Right? So this show, Cult, was supposed to replace Emily Owens, MD, airing Tuesday at 9 p.m. And it only premieres to a 0.3. Right? So that's already at the lowest level that Emily Owens had done. After a couple of weeks, it got shifted to Friday, where it dropped to a 0.1. And this was the first program in the history of the CW to ever have a 0.1 for an original. It's going to be like 3 years until there's going to be another one on the CW that actually hits a 0.1. And they're going to pull it, and then they're going to air the rest of it again on Fridays as a burn-off in the summer. So just really tested in 2012, 2013, how little viewed a show could be during that was airing on broadcast. So those were some of the drama flops of the 2012-2013 season. Do you remember any of these? Were there any of these that could have done better in different circumstances, deserved a second chance? Okay, tell me what you think.